Hey crew, it's Gavin Seim here. And I know I wanted to kind of take a couple days off from the page, but I want to do a quick update tonight to make sure you guys are aware of what's going on in the trials in Nevada. And we talked about this at length in yesterday's stream, talking about how severe this is getting. But there was another bombshell and even more corruption today. And this is striking because it represents what's happening in all our courts. And I thought I should take a minute to get a condensed version out of what's going on. And let me know if you can hear me. Share this, like it, get on board, spread the message. The Bundy Ranch trials going on in Nevada are a mistrial beyond belief. Now, that doesn't necessarily matter to the government. And quite honestly, to the appeals courts, I don't think at this point, I think the courts are so corrupt that they can really do whatever they want. They can do things like preventing constitutions in the courtroom like they did yesterday. They can do things like telling the defense attorneys that they don't get to object. The judge will object for them, and then she will rule after the prosecution has finished their argument. The courts in America are at a point where, as happened today, they told Todd Engel, who was representing himself in the trials down there, he asked a question about Bureau of Land Management agent Dan Love. He asked one of the witnesses, apparently, that was on the stand, is there an ongoing criminal investigation of this man? The prosecution immediately objected. Now contrast this, right? The judge tells the defense, you don't object. I will object for you, and when the prosecution finishes, then I will rule on the objection. Today, Todd Engel asks a question, and the prosecution immediately objects. Court completely stops. The jury is removed from the courtroom so that they can't see the shenanigans that are going on. The prosecution says he keeps asking questions he's not supposed to. Wait a minute, what? I'm sorry. Guys, the prosecution should not even have the right to objection in a criminal trial. You have a right to present whatever evidence and whatever argument you want. And if you don't, there is no due process. But it gets better, because that's not even the mistrial I'm talking about. Because later on today in court, Greg Burleson, who is one of the political prisoners, and you've probably heard him talked about because he's the man that supposedly went blind in jail, and he had all kinds of health problems. They even stopped court last week for Greg Burleson, saying that he was having a medical situation and they had to stop court. Well, today, Greg Burleson, it came out in court, he's sitting in court, in the courtroom, in his trial, and it came out that Greg Burleson was an informant. And all the way up through Oregon, he had been informing to the federal government. So get this, you have a man who is an informant against all the men on trial, who is in the private meetings with the defendants in that trial working out their case. Supposedly his defense attorney didn't even know he was an informant, and that just kind of slipped out of the prosecution's mouth in court today. Now, if that's not a mistrial, there's no such thing as a mistrial. So at this point, we don't even really know what's going on with Burleson. Is he really even blind? Because he looked healthy when you look at photos of him not long ago. Is it all faked? Has he even been in the jail most of the time? Is he really even charged? Or is he simply a setup being sent inside confidential meetings with defendants and their defense attorneys to report? Guys, do you realize the level of insanity? And I want to mention something else. I have been under constant attack, and not just me, but others like Kelly Stewart and other people that speak out, that question, right? That question the people who are loyal to these traitors and say, wait a minute, are you a loyalist? Are you an informant? Are you a provocateur? What are you doing? I've been being attacked and blocked and defamed and lied about by people who are proven informants, and we have these informants and provocateurs that have invested every level, infiltrated every level of leadership, to the point where you have leaders in the community telling the community, block Gavin Seim for doing this. Block Gavin Seim because he's calling people out. Block Gavin Seim because he's questioning. And every time this happens, guys, the doubts are validated. We have to question what seems wrong. Doesn't mean we're a lynch mob, But all of these things, right? Who would have thought Greg Burleson would turn out to be the informant, right? And yet you had some weird things, because Greg Burleson's supposed relative, his cousin or something, was actually out on these threads with known provocateurs and informants, bashing people like me who dared to question the official lines, who stood up and asked questions and questioned our corrupt police officers, who questioned people who were acting in a loyalist manner. So once again, this affirms. So number one, yes, we have a mistrial, but I don't know if it'll matter, because I don't think the court cares. At this point, the court is proving to America that they can do whatever they want. But number two, this validates how we do have to question each other. If you say, hey, I'm questioning where your allegiances lie based on what you're saying, and somebody freaks out and gets offended and they start attacking you, they're the problem. Guys, do you see me freaking out when people question me, right? People call me an informant, or they call me this. They call me every terrible thing you can call me. And it's disappointing to see people do that. It's disappointing to see people who should know better turn on me and turn on the message that I present, which is liberty and rooting out corruption and liars and informants and provocateurs and loyalists. Because you can't have liberty if you don't do those things. You can't have liberty. You can't be a defender of the Constitution and not oppose the blue line. The two are incongruous with one another. You have to oppose those attacking liberty to be a defender of liberty. That's what Lavoie was. It's very important to remember that Lavoie Finicum was killed. Lavoie Finicum, one of the key reasons they were able to kill him is because there was an informant amongst them that was on that trip, sending them the information, telling them where they were going to be, what they were going to be doing. There was a Judas among them, and our movement is completely infiltrated with those. See, if I had called out Mark McConnell then, right, people would have been mad at me had I known this and called it out. And there was some people that raised questions. People would have been angry because, oh, he's one of us. How dare you question him, right? So what we're doing is we shame those who raise legitimate questions. We shame those who question the illegitimate authority. We shame those who use boldness and stand up to the police. Guys, you have prisoners. You have Ammon and Ryan. The word is they're in solitary again because they're refusing to be violated and strip searched by the guards. So they lock them in solitary. They're absolutely abusing these prisoners in solitary. Guys, Ammon and Ryan and some of the other prisoners are in there. They are so fervent about standing up to our corrupt police that they're doing it even when they're in chains and when they're physically being abused for it. Think about that. Just let that settle in for a moment. If you're not questioning people who are defending our police, who are saying we should be chatting up the feds, we should be working with the feds, if you're not questioning people who are saying the enemy is the good guy, if you're not calling out people who attack anyone who gets anything done, guys, you're not fighting. You're just watching. You're just an observer. You're just a neutral, silent observer at that point. So it's time to get deep in this. It's time to get our hands dirty, not with anger or hate, but with principle. It's time to start calling out people. It's time to start naming infiltrators and being willing to tell people you need to stop hearing and listening to the people that are whispering and lying in your ear. Guys, our group's infiltrated. There's infiltrators and provocateurs getting close to the family and spreading lies and discord, trying to keep us divided, of different prisoners. And look, this isn't just a Bundy or a Lavoie Finicum thing. Guys, this is really important too, and I'll close with this. The trial in Nevada is a mistrial in so many ways. It's a kangaroo court in so many ways. It's an absolute mockery of justice that Judge Navarro is carrying out in this court. But you know what? This is par for the course. This is how every court in America operates, from your county to your federal. It's an absolute kangaroo court in every single trial, and you must come to that realization. We must come to the understanding that we don't have a constitution that is regarded as law anymore. The Constitution is not even allowed in the courtrooms, literally or figuratively. If you even make a case for your defense in a courtroom, and you try to defend yourself as you think is appropriate, the court will not even allow you to defend yourself. The court, when you are accused, will assume your guilt, and you will only be allowed to defend yourself in the way the court deems appropriate, which is the way that the prosecution wants, because they both work on the same team and their paycheck comes from the very same bank. Figure it out. Put the pieces together. Let's stop being afraid. Let's stand up. And let's oppose it. You have to oppose all of the justice system. You have to oppose the blue line. We have to speak out. We have to stand up. We have to be bold. We have to cast off our fear. We have to unite by dividing with frauds and liars and loyalists and those who defend the evil, and come together in liberty. You guys have a good night. God help us. Corruption today. And this is striking because it represents what's happening in all our courts. And I thought I should take a minute to get a condensed version out of what's going on. And let me know if you can hear me. Share this, like it, get on board, spread the message. The Bundy Ranch trials going on in Nevada are a mistrial beyond belief. Now, that doesn't necessarily matter to the government. And quite honestly, to the appeals courts, I don't think at this point, I think the courts are so corrupt that they can really do whatever they want. They can do things like preventing constitutions in the courtroom like they did yesterday. They can do things like telling the defense attorneys that they don't get to object. The judge will object for them, and then she will rule after the prosecution has finished their argument. The courts in America are at a point where, as happened today, they told Todd Engel, who was representing himself in the trials down there, he asked a question about Bureau of Land Management agent Dan Love. He asked one of the witnesses, apparently, that was on the stand, is there an ongoing criminal investigation of this man? The prosecution immediately objected. Now contrast this, right? The judge tells the defense, you don't object. I will object for you, and when the prosecution finishes, then I will rule on the objection. Today, Todd Engel, hey crew, it's Gavin Seim here. And, I know I wanted to kind of take a couple days off from the page, but I want to do a quick update tonight to make sure you guys are aware of what's going on in the trials in Nevada. And we talked about this at length in yesterday's stream, talking about how severe this is getting, but there was another bombshell and even more